Well, you asked for it, you got it. Today I've got Havard Steele, AKA Snakeman. It's going to be so exciting you won't be able to stand it. Man, must have had a tongue that had no feelings, because he could drink it straight out of the pot. So Havard, we're more related than we realized. So you're related, according to my cousin Tony, who really likes you. His wife is a Hancock, Ginger Hancock, and you're related to the Hancocks how?
My wife is a Hancock, Judy Hancock, Fred's daughter.
Now, which one was Ples?
Burris. He was married to...
no relation to me.
Bessie Burris.
Burris.
Well, she's Bessie Hancock, and she married Ples Burris.
He's the one that they said, he said, I saw you and I reached up and wove at you. I remember that saying. I never knew him.
He's a good
But
man.
was he redheaded?
Lived out there on Benton Pike.
Is he still alive?
No.
Oh. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Whenever you read a story in the newspaper or see something on television about somebody getting arrested, you naturally assume they're guilty. Unless the story's about you or someone you love, then you'll think differently. And you'll want a lawyer who will defend you. My name's Scott Canavis. If you or someone you love has been charged with a crime, call me. I'll return your phone calls, I'll work on your case, and I will defend you.
Robert Steele, connect that.
That's my daddy's brother.
Your daddy's brother. And your daddy was?
Cotton Steele.
Cotton Steele. Boy, we are so related. So my grandmother, Laverne married Roy Ormby.
Yeah.
They weren't related directly to the Steeles, right? They just lived down the road. The Steeles lived past Union Grove on the left. Now, Robert, he hadn't been dead but 3 or 4 years, has he? He lived, I saw him driving, he was like, what, 102?
I think he like 4 months being 101 when he died. He turned his driver's license in when he was 100, turned 100.
And he was getting around good, wasn't he? What'd he die of?
I really don't remember. I know he fell and broke his hip running from Waspers when he was 95.
But now, so Robert Steele, his sister was Margaret. And Margaret married Paul
Renner.
D. Renner. Paul D. Renner's dad was D. Renner, who I'm named after. His daughter was Jane Burris, which gave birth to my dad, which was a whole nother story that not anybody knows about. And so Margaret married Paul D. You know, and then you've got a picture of Paul D. Let's see. Paul D's son, Paul D.
Right.
Let me show that one. So this is Paul D., which we had here a couple weeks ago. Can you get that, Gwen? It's an old picture.
1951 and 2, I think it is.
He looks just the same as he did, doesn't he? And Paul D. had a brother named Bruce Renner, which everybody knows Paul, or Bruce. And he had another brother named Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see Sam's picture. And then Sam, whatever happened to Sam?
I think he might have died with cancer. I'm not sure. He's a tough one in his day, though.
Well, Sam was the oldest, is that right?
Youngest.
The youngest. I'd say that they couldn't have hardly whipped Paul, though. It had to do it every week.
Yes.
And Bruce, too. Bruce was outsmarted him, wasn't he?
He would outsmart him.
What about, so Margaret, do you remember when Margaret and Paul D used to drive in that little white truck for Bruce? They drove everywhere. Towards the end, they drove everywhere for Bruce and Della. I guess they were runners or whatever. So how does Cotton Steel, what did he do?
Painter. He's a roller king.
Roller King. I think he might have painted my grandmother Laverne's house one time.
Probably
if
did.
I remember.
He done a lot of work for Pee Wee Williams' wife.
Oh, yeah. I
Cherokee
forgot about Pee
Construction.
Wee.
Cherokee Construction, Williams.
I forgot about Pee Wee. Whatever happened to Pee Wee?
He's still around. Gail passed away, I think, last fall. There's in Florida. And but Pee Wee's still doing some machine work.
Boy, he did a lot of machine work over the years, didn't he? I remember he used to do work for Ken Alberry and everybody, man.
Come a long ways from working at Magic Shelf.
Oh, yeah.
And then going to car parts.
He was up there and then he was up there behind where Top Tech Automotive is. Isn't that where he was at?
ART.
ART. Well, it's a small world, isn't it? How we remember this stuff. Now, wonder how the Steels, who was their parents? Robert and Cotton's parents.
Bob Steele, R.H. Steele, but they called him Bob, and Dinah Hicks. That's what puts me and Victor Hicks skinned each other.
Golly. Boy, if we get to thinking,
And Paul Steele, or Bob Steele, he moved from down around Red Hill to Wildwood Avenue in, I want to think 1902 or something, right along in there. And then he moved out there where Robert lived in about 1920 or 21. And then that farm's been still in that family till just a few years ago after Robert passed.
And then they're related to the Steps. How are they related to the Steps?
I don't know that we really related. It was just you had farm friends and neighbors, and you just felt like you was kin.
Joe Step and Brasky Step?
Yeah, now
and
that.
Roger Step?
Mm-hmm.
There weren't a relation? I thought there was
not with the Steels, I don't think. No, they just was good friends. Me and Robbie, Brasky's son, lived just through the woods years ago, and we'd play when we was kids. And then they moved over on New Hope Road, and that's too far to walk.
Let's see, now how old are you?
I'll be 77 in June.
So you're the same age as my dad, or right about.
Close. Yeah, I think he might be a year or two older.
I appreciate that business card you gave me. Isn't that funny? You ran across that yesterday. That's my dad's handwriting. He always wrote stuff on business cards more than anybody. You know, everybody else just passed them out. He always had notes on them. I'll keep that. I appreciate that. So did you know, I guess you knew my mother, Juanita Ornby. She would have been about your age.
Yeah, Juanita was, I think she's 1 year older than me, I think. She's a grade ahead of me.
And she was the youngest of them. There were Jim, Jack, Joe, Judy, Jan, Juanita. Do you know any of their kids, Randy or Rodney or Rudy?
Now, Joe when he, at Mallory Battery,
He was at Mallory Battery.
He was an influence on getting Daddy on there before he ever started painting.
Oh. And then Joe quit there and started building houses, and I started working for him in about 79 or something like that, maybe 80. Boy, so you know, we've grown up basically in the same sort of nick of the woods, Bates Pike, and boy, that was so far out in the country during that time, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I remember driving there as a kid. We'd lived on Norman Chapel Road, and we'd go down, I guess 20th Street, there off, and cross over to Durkee Road, take a left, and back then they called it Airport Road. Didn't they call it Airport Road?
Well, they used to call it Randolph Samples Airport Road because there's an airport in Ralph Fennell's field.
Yeah, Randolph Samples Road, because Randolph Samples, was there a relation there?
I think there was, you know, they was both kind of in on starting Union Grove Church.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Kim Randolph's.
We used to corncob fight in Larry Phillips's barn.
You and Kim?
Yeah.
And Sheridan?
Sheridan was a little older, so he never did end up over them. It's just me and Larry and Kim and another or two.
In whose barn?
Larry Phillips's daddy's barn.
Corncob fights.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It could be dangerous if the corncob was wet.
So you took a corn cob. Did it have corn on it?
No, you
Shucks, or
you just pick up the corn cob itself and slang it.
what was the point? Just kids?
It came like fighting, but you didn't have to have full contact. It's better than throwing rotten eggs.
I guess so. Now, Ralph Fennell, they said he drove by a piece of property one time and really liked it, and said he decided he was going to see who owned it. He was going to buy it, and he went up to the courthouse and looked it up, and he already owned it.
That's his daddy.
Oh, his daddy.
Bass Fennell. Doyle McCracken was a surveyor.
Uh-huh.
He said you could leave Bass Fennell on that property where Whirlpool is.
Uh-huh.
All right. You could leave there and walk to one corner of his property and step over on another piece of property and do that all the way to Old Fort and never get off Bass Fennell property.
Is that
That's
right?
when you buy land cheap.
I guess Bass Fennell had a, and you know, I knew Ralph a little bit. He used to go to Cleveland Plywood. He got smashed under a RV, didn't he?
Yeah, the motor and transmission fell on him.
Isn't that something with all his money?
He used to always want to cut my beard off. I had a red beard.
Uh-huh.
He wanted to cut it off.
Ralph, he seemed like an old man at the time. He probably wasn't that old.
I really don't know how. Beverly's still alive, his wife.
Mm. Yeah, she owns that property out next to where Whirlpool is now, I think. I don't know her. So Union Grove, wonder the Steels, they were Baptist, and the Owenbys were Church of Christ.
Yeah. One had music and one didn't.
Yeah, that's the only difference. Well, a difference on the baptism and a few other things, but you know, I did the behind that Thompson Springs Baptist Church, I built I guess the fellowship hall, maybe something like that. I can't remember. That's when Robert came up there, and somebody was driving him, or he was driving. I can't remember how.
Well, Robbie used to drive him around.
I believe it
some.
was Robbie.
And he'd go to a funeral and he'd say, "Yeah, I'm gonna have my kids put in a nursing home." And then Robbie was like 77 or 8 then.
Robert went to a lot of funerals, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was good about going to funerals.
One thing I'll remember for all my life, he said, "Never stop doing something."
Well, I tell you what, that is becoming, and I don't think it's just, I think it's really staying busy, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not just working jigsaw puzzles, but I mean, like trying to really stay busy.
Yep.
What do you do now mostly?
I run a fashioner route. I go to body shops and sell these clips that puts these new cars together after they wreck.
Oh, like Jeff Stansberry's?
I don't really call on him, but Cleveland's kind of tied up with C&L in a couple places. I go to other towns, like I go to Dayton and up in there, and I go to Blue Ridge and Blairsville and Murphy and Lafayette, and all the way back up through Rock Springs to Chickamauga and back home. And then Wednesday this coming week, I'll be going up 58 to Kingston and out to Midtown and back.
You should be retired, shouldn't you? Or you're doing what Robert said.
Well, you know, I was self-employed and I didn't pay enough in, so I don't draw enough to just live off of it.
Yeah.
So I got to have that supplement.
How did you get your name Snakeman? That's got to be a story.
I used to be pretty wild back in the day. And I was in a river up in Helen, Georgia at a rod run. It's 95-degree weather. And so we all went down to the river and went swimming. And we had to cut our blue jeans off because we didn't take stuff to swim in. And we was out there, and somebody hollered, "There's a snake coming." So here come a snake swimming down through there. They spooked it up at the bridge. And, who was it? Ronnie Shoemaker said, "Catch that snake." So I called it, and he said, "Give me 5." And I come across like that, and he moved his hands, and when it hit the water, it kind of dazzled it. And I got it behind its head. And there's rumors I bit its head off, but I didn't bite its head off. I did time it just right, and I pulled its tongue out and thought I could play with it all day.
Yeah. And
I didn't think about the fangs.
Yeah.
So then we started pouring 3 different kinds of beer down it. I was drinking, back in that day, Miller Lite. Gene Standridge was drinking Coors, which you couldn't get this side of the Mississippi unless it's bootleg. And Billy Jackson was drinking Tubergo. And Coors and the Miller Lite, that tails just stay just down as pretty as you please. You pour it Tubergo in, that tail curl up in there. So I started saying raunchy beer, smooth beer, and the Hellendorf Inn Motel is across the street, and they have patios. So this guy hollered and said, "What kind of snake is it?" And I said, "I don't know, I'll bring it and let you see." So me and Gene Standridge is going across the river, and we'd like about 10 foot being to the bank, and he says, "Bite that snake." So I bit it, but I was holding it behind its head. I didn't bite its head off. I bit it. People started getting out of our way, and I go to toward the first patio, and then people went in their room. Second patio was the man that asked what kind of snake it was. And he looked at it, and I stuck it up in his face, and he said, "Man, that's a copperhead. You live in dangerous, boy." And I said, because I was 10 foot tall, you know. I went by the next patio, and then people just kind of sit there, but they didn't get up and go in the room. Well, there's a gap there, and you went through the motel breezeway to get to the street. So I started through there, and here's these about 3 big old 350-pound black women pushing these carts. And when they seen that snake, there's towels and soap went everywhere. So
they were the only smart ones.
So I went on by and went out there and stepped off on that blacktop, and it's super hot. You know, 95-degree atmosphere weather. And I went out there and got that concrete, went up to the main drag, and I went up into town. You can carry an open container. And I had some strapped on me. And people's elbowing, pointing at me, you know, and they'd get out of my way. Well, my buddies come up there and said, "We don't want to have to get you out of jail." So come on back down here to the river. So we started back down through there, and we stopped and took pictures of us pouring that beer in that snake in that city parking lot. And then we got down there, and the old snake was pretty passed out by then, so I threw him back in the river. 2 weeks later, I'm at Winston-Salem, North Carolina, at the Mini Nationals, and I was walking down through there, and this woman elbowed her husband and pointed at me. I went over and I said, "You got a problem?" She said, "Was you in a river over in Helen, Georgia a couple weeks ago?" And I said, "Sure." She said, "I told you a snake man." Well, I never had a nickname before, and I walked off, and I thought, yeah, Snake Man, I'll be Snake Man. And that's, everybody thinks it's because of the Cobra Mustang, but it ain't. You know, people relate.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I was thinking that might be the relation, but it wasn't at all.
Mm-mm.
Did you calm down?
Oh yeah, Lord took control of my life May of 1980.
So you didn't have a real long run.
No, it's probably 71 to 80.
How come? Just living large?
Yeah. Just went with the flow.
Yeah. Well, who else did you run around during those days?
Well, me and Bud Holmes, Eddie Phillips, Bill Helms, Chucky Maddox, Wayne Cartwright, back earlier days. Just numerous ones, you know.
Was Cleveland a lot smaller then? I mean, as far as, I know it was smaller, but was there as much activity then as there is now, as far as like events or something?
I don't know if they had all these little bitty pie eating contests and all these little doodad type things, but we didn't have that Halloween thing uptown or nothing back in, but we just circle. You know, back before it was Dairy Cream, it was Little Pig.
Yeah.
We'd circle it, and you'd watch that old big hole going around. And then we'd go down, go up by the monument, go up around the Bear's Den, and cross from Bear's Den over. That didn't exist back then.
Where was the Bear's Den?
Rebel North, where the Mexican place is.
Oh.
Right down yonder.
So you'd go you'd circle the monument.
Where we'd actually come up. You could come back up to the village and then come up Inman Street and then turn up Ocoee Street, go to the monument, and everybody wanted to drag race because you were 2 lane to 1 lane.
Yeah.
And see who could get the jump, and then go up and circle the Bear's Den, which it was Bear's Den before it was the Rebel. And there's always cool cars there, and then come back out of there and go reverse your route and go around the Rebel South, which was, before that, it was the, it ain't coming to me, but it was something.
Was that Corky Whitlock's, Corky McGowan's place?
No, that was the Sugar and Spice.
Okay.
It was across, you circle through, went up the mud hole and come back, was Corky's place.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was, but it was something else before it was the Rebel.
That's all kids did back then, that and the ball games, right?
Yeah.
And worked, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Most people worked.
I went to Public Works in May of 1965. I didn't graduate till 66, but I got a job through Distributed Education, Miss England. She's a blast.
Did you, what did you do at Public Works?
I went to work at Commercial Business Machines, which was Commercial Office Supply then, before they changed the name. And I cleaned typewriters and ad machines and calculators and stayed with them 11 years. And then they want to make me wear a tie, and I said, bye.
That wasn't your thing?
Nope, they don't want nothing tie around my neck.
You know, you don't even find typewriters anymore, old typewriters, do you?
I see them occasionally out. People just got them for resale or something.
Yeah.
The cleanest, best looking old typewriter that I've seen in years is down there at an antique store in Oodlewall.
A real old one that's
It's
clean.
a roll.
Did those typewriters have an oil in them that kept the?
We sprayed a fine mist of oil. When I'd tank it and get it out, you blow all that stuff out of it, and you took these old, remember those black flag fly sprays?
Yeah.
We would take a lightweight oil and spray all in that thing and then let it drip dry, and then blow the extra out, and that would stay with it.
You know, that's how they used to find a bunch of crimes with the typewriters and the numbers that were different than the others.
The way the type is.
Yeah. That was the early forensic science sort of stuff.
Yep.
So, but when did you get mostly into Mustangs? That's what you're the mostly known for.
My first Mustang I bought or traded for in 1972 is a 67 Fastback, and it was actually Neil Dover's old Mustang. Neil Dover used to play music, and it was dark blue. I got it from James Goins, and then in 1976 we stripped it down, painted it red, white, and blue, and I still got it. It needs restoring, but.
Are those things, why were you just, because your mainly was not just, I mean, it was not just Mustangs, but just Fords in general, right?
Mm-hmm. Back in the day, I had 17 Chevrolets before I ever seen the light. And my Chevrolet buddies made fun of me when I got this Ford from John Brown, Larry Phillips's brother-in-law. And so we got into a drag race, his title against my mags and new tars, and he's gonna leave me on blocks, but we run out there at the old DX station on 64 Highway, and I beat him. Then we went over to his house to collect, and he come out with a log chain gonna hit me with it. And Junior Gresham from Gresham Trailer Sales and Pedro Gates grabbed him, and Larry got up and said, "Pay up, John, you egged it on." That was my first ever drag race. So then I started feeling a lot better, you know, I won with a Ford. And then my second drag race was against Joe Stelp in a black 65 Chevelle, 327, drag plugs. And what I egged that on, well, me and him never would hit each other up for a run. His daddy owned a store in the community, Les Stelp. And he said, "Joe, I bet your car wouldn't outrun Havard's old Ford." That's all it took, buddy. So we went down to Taylor School, and that wasn't a four-way stop then. We run back up Bates Pike and right on.
Lord help. That's a little winding road, wasn't it?
Yeah, it had a curve in it, but that's...
And you just running side by side?
Yeah.
How'd you know another car wasn't coming?
Well, you could see up through there. Now, there's a dip right there at Glenn Thompson's that you couldn't really tell if it's somebody in, but...
How fast would y'all run?
I really don't know. Back in the day, you know, you was younger and you didn't think about...
85, 95?
Oh, now, when I'd go to work on Saturday morning, I'd pass like 5 cars out there by Snort straightaway.
Mm-hmm.
I'd get up to about 110 and back in. Get to town quicker.
Was the road good then?
Yeah, it's 2-lane, but it was a good road, and people drove a little more cautious back in than they do now.
Now, Snort's, that was close to the steak and, or Shake Shack, right?
Mm-mm. He first had an old Pure station on 64, about where you turn in to go to Bobby Reimer's house or McMahon Road.
Was that
It was old Ice. He called it Ice House, Snort's Ice.
was it where the Gas and Go was?
You talking about Pump and Go?
Yeah, Pump and Go.
No, Pump and Go's on Spring Place Road.
No, there was another one on 64
Oh,
Highway.
yeah, it was out there. No, that's too far out.
Too far out.
Okay, when the road come through and took Snort's place, his name was G.W. Howe. He moved down on Lyle Road, so he was first building on Lyle Road. Not total buildings, but first new building.
Yeah.
And so he operated right there in a little small building until Lamar Lawson knocked it off the foundation. He got drive and reverse mixed up.
Not for real. Just that was the excuse, right?
Yeah.
What was Snort's like? What'd you do? Did you ever go there?
You went around back, and there's a window back there, and you just told him what you wanted, and you handed him the money, then he hands you bottle out, mostly half pints and pints.
So it was during Prohibition, I guess, right? Or no, that was just.
He's still there in the 60s because the road didn't come through until about 69. And then he moved down here on Lyle.
And the police just let him do that back in the day.
Me and a couple buddies went and bought us a goat farm one Saturday, and we was who do Dinky Dow, and we went uptown to the Red Food Store next to the burger shelf, and we was sitting on the tailgate and patting them goats and having a few. Well, here comes Lewis Jones and Robert Lawson in a detective city police car. And I didn't actually throw the goat in. Gene Standridge throwed it in the back seat. And Robert started panicking. He said, let's get out of here before somebody sees this. And David Shink worked at the village as a security guard. Big David Shink run a leather shop. He kept wondering why car 314 report to Red Food Store and nothing else would be said. Well, they'd come up there and see them goats, and somebody said, why didn't they take you into jail? I said, they didn't have a sale for the goats. He finally took a spotlight and shined over there. Shink did.
You know, back then people did more practical jokes than they do now, don't they?
Yeah.
Wonder why that is. I mean, they had really sophisticated type jokes, didn't they? They call practical jokes. My uncle Jack was known for that.
Yeah.
Did you know him?
Mm-hmm.
That was their big thing, is to have practical
Get
jokes.
something on somebody.
Yeah. I don't know why that was such a, I guess they just don't do that like they used to.
That's just like right there in front of Ma Steele and them's old house. You know, Robert got the big house later on, and Ma and Pa lived down there in the smaller house that I lived in until I was 3-year-old. But it was gravel road, and this is in Daddy's days. They run a barbed wire across the road and put corn shocks across it, and a car running through it on Halloween.
What was Margaret like?
Feisty, smoked a lot, spoke her piece.
That was different than Robert, wasn't it?
Robert was just laid back. I never knew what he did for a living before he was a farmer. He was an electrician.
Well, I never knew that.
I thought Jack was the electrician. He taught Jack. Robert worked, he helped wire up the first building at Oak Ridge. He ran the power lines across to Pikeville, across them mountains.
Before he started farming. So Don Steele, I use him a lot for electrical. They do a
He's
real
Jack's
good job.
boy.
Yep. That must be where he got it. Must just be in him.
Jack used to work down at T&T plant here in Chattanooga before they shut it down.
You got a picture of Margaret?
Yeah. Right there.
Boy. Well, that's the way they did it in the old days. They all stood there and...
There's 12 kids. Of course, one died early in life.
Well, that would have been, what, 1965 maybe?
Yeah, or before. A lot of times they have dates. It's got a date on it. Well, that's actually 1970.
1970.
Yeah.
Let me see. Well, them was the good old days, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
All the women wore those things around their necks, like a big bow or something.
At Christmas, we'd have probably 110 people in that little house up there.
Now, did you ever go down to the whose place? When I went down to Union Grove, they used to go to at the end of Vacation Bible School. They'd go down to Thompson Springs. Was there Thompson
To
Springs?
do baptizing or something?
No,
or-
just like the end of food on the grounds or something.
Oh, yeah, they used to have homecomings down
Homecomings, yeah, like
And
a
singings.
yeah. Was it Thompson Springs?
Mm-hmm. And Kinsler Church of God used to be right there across from Joe Stepp's Daddy's old house.
Mm-hmm. We used to go in there to the Cartwrights and Charlie Cartwright. Do you know Charlie well?
Yeah, yeah.
He just passed away, what, 3 weeks ago or no? A month ago?
Oh,
Less
I
than a
didn't
month.
know that.
Oh, yeah, less than a month, I guess.
He was Robbie's age. Robbie Steele's age.
Oh,
so-
yeah, I guess so. And they lived close.
Mm-hmm. Actually, if you go across the hill from Roy Omby's,
You're right there.
you're there.
Yep. And then there was Pearl Cartwright.
Yeah.
She was about your age.
She is, I think, a year older. She fell and hit her head on concrete or something, killed her.
Yep.
She's married to Don Hill.
Don Hill, yeah.
And she used to be married to somebody in Florida that had a drugstore.
Don Hill, he comes to our house every Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Well, he can paddle.
He's as old as he is. I still wouldn't want to mess with him, would you?
He could burn you up.
They say he was tough.
He was, I think, a math teacher and a phys ed teacher at Bradley.
Before he went into the
Meat
slaughterhouse.
process. Yeah.
Him and my uncle Jim were like best of friends. Well, it's a small world.
Yeah, he actually built a house just down past Don Steele's house back in there at one time.
He had an interesting life. His mind's still good. He's comes every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, because my mother was real good friends with Pearl.
See, Miss Cartwright, Pearl's mama, was named Pearl also. And she used to keep me and my brother while Mama went to Public Works in the summer. And so we knowed the Cartwrights big. And my brother was afraid of Wayne and Pearl's daddy, R.C. Cartwright, because his voice. He just sounded mean.
Well, R.C. Cartwright, wasn't he the big starter in the Union Grove Church of Christ too?
He probably was. And he's on the school board at one time too.
So now there was do you remember a little house there between Union Grove and Roy Ormby's?
Yeah, Larry Phillips used to live in it.
It had what, one bedroom?
That seems like. When I totaled my Volkswagen right there across from Union Grove over in the corner of that property,
Yeah.
I walked up to Larry's house, which he lived there. He's newly wed and stuff. And I had hit the windshield and I had blood up here and I was touching my chest and everything. And he just like went hysterical. I said, just call Mom and Daddy and they can call me to the hospital.
Which Larry Phillips was that?
He's Hubert's son.
Oh, Lord. Hubert Phillips.
Yep, he was big in
Union Grove. He always didn't he sit up there on the side on the deacon's bench?
Yeah, he was a deacon. He's a plumber.
A plumber, that's right. Hubert Phillips.
And he had a brother named Austin Phillips that lived next door to Hubert. And Austin was married to one of Daddy's sisters also, and Hubert was married to one of Daddy's sisters.
Wonder what they do. It was just renting that house from Roy, I guess?
Yeah.
You won't believe this, but now the lady that lived there was Mary. Or Messy. Not Mary, Messy. That was Roy's mother. And so that little house was a one-bedroom house. And I built these apartments in Charleston, and I modeled them after that design. The same shutters, everything. And I got the design from Kim Randolph's remembrance of that house.
That's a cute little house.
Oh, yeah. And it was like it was teeny tiny. Somebody told me that they sold that house and they moved it somewhere on Ladd Springs Road.
I don't know.
But that would have been one of those houses they built in 2 days' time or something.
Yeah. Now, back in bicycle riding days, me and Wayne Cartwright and my little brother, Gerald, we used to clean that graveyard.
I think Kim Randolph still mows it.
Yeah, back in the day, though, they just paid us $25 and we...
Kim still wouldn't pay you much more than that.
He wasn't over it then. I think R.C. Cartwright was over it, Wayne's daddy. And then the year that they let us go and move somebody else in, they paid them $125.
Boy, that's a hard one to mow, too, isn't it? It's steep
all in
when
rocks.
you get... Yeah, it's steep when you get... It's all rock. It's just all rocks. I think that's where they buried Charlie, right up there. You know, Laverne's and Roy's buried across the street, and Joe. And anymore, you can walk through there and see all of those names, and you just know they're all from that community. There was what other names were there? Pritchett? No, was it Pritchett? Wayne Pippinger. Remember Wayne Pippinger?
I remember as a young boy, Leroy Pippinger, and he had a sister named Ann Pippinger.
Now, where did all those people come from they just randomly came to that Bates Pike area? There wasn't anything significant about it, was it?
No. I just know that Paul Steele, had that property across from Wallace Reimer Grocery.
Yeah.
And he owned from right there at Wildwood plumb to that next road that come in by Foster's. And that was farmland. They had cattle and...
J.D. Foster, right?
Yeah, yeah. But from there to there, Paul Steele used to own all that. And they farmed it and sold eggs and milk and stuff off of it. And then they moved out to Bates Pike. He bought that place out there. And I don't know if they built a house or if it's done there, or they added on to it or what. But in some of my notes, summers, I've got it wrote down what year he moved out there. But it's in around 1920.
The Fosters weren't related to them, were they? They were just good friends.
Community. Donald Forster and Oscar Forster, and the daddy was Oscar Forster also. And the daughter Foster used to be married to John Paul.
To John Paul Douglas?
Yeah.
What was her name?
I can see her face, but I'm not thinking of it right off.
It was 2 words.
Yeah.
It was 2 words, like Imogene or something like that.
Nice little guy. It wasn't Imogene, though, because that's my mama's name.
It was something 2 words.
Kind of like Mary Lou.
Yeah,
or
something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Good little girl.
Yeah, John Paul, he told me he liked her. She just wanted a divorce. Just when he was working at the grocery stores in Meigs County, I guess, or Dayton.
Meigs County.
Meigs County, when he had that grocery store. Now, back then, a lot of the communities had these small stores, like Les's Grocery. Wasn't that on Ladd Springs? Les's?
Yeah, it was before you get into that curve to old Maple's place, before you get up to Moore's Chapel Church.
Yeah, they used to play cards in there when I was in high school.
So that's how Snort ended up buying that Pure Station. He went out there and played cards and liked it, and then he bought it. They originally, his daddy and his brother Buster used to have a ice place. I think it was Snort's Ice, right about where the old CC Card body shop, CC Card auto place was, and then there's a collision place in there now, across from New High School.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of their ice place, but it was actually bootleg.
Why'd they call it an ice house?
Just a front.
They didn't sell ice at all?
They might have, but I never did see any of it go out. And then they lived in, I think, 3 or 4 little small houses about where the Diplomat is. And right there on the corner where there used to be still a car lot, they had them trampolines in the ground at ground level. It wasn't standing up on stands.
They're back to doing that nowadays, aren't they? And for these kids in these buildings, there's nothing new, is there? Boy, you're talking about places that I would consider downtown now. You've seen a lot of changes, hadn't you?
Yes, a bunch.
So after you passed where the Mexican place is, was that all dirt road like out through here?
No, it's blacktop back when I went, Actually, 5 Point, when I first started going to town, was blacktop. They used to have a horse-drawn trolley up through there on Emmons Street.
What's a horse-drawn trolley?
It pulled like a little train car thing, and the horse pulled it up through there, and you get on it and they go further and get off, just like a trolley at Gatlinburg or something.
But that wasn't that far to walk, was it?
No, but
That was
it's like I was talking to a boy yesterday. His daddy didn't like driving uptown, and he would go park behind Thompson Hardware back in there, and they'd walk. If they had to go to the dentist, they had to walk plumb over to Stansbury's with old YMCA.
I guess it's a pretty good walk.
Yeah, but that's as far as he'd drive. He wouldn't go no further.
So
And
they'd get on that trolley, and somebody manned the horse. Did it cost something to get on it?
I don't know. It was before my time. I've seen pictures of it, though. And you know, we used to ride into town, right there where the old Village Theater used to be. That used to be a big rock bluff, and American Legion was up there.
Wasn't it a swimming hole at one time?
I don't know that. I remember Bryant Construction owned the biggest part of that property. And he had on the yon end where they built that Cleveland National Bank at the Village. That used to be equipment stuff where they built the Village. And he sold that property to the Corns. And then they built the Village in, what, 61 or so?
Yeah. Maybe 65, something like that.
I want to think it. Yeah, you're probably right, but I was thinking its grand opening was around 62.
That was a real big thing for Cleveland at the time. I remember the Santa Claus would come on the helicopter, remember?
Yeah, Bob Randy and...
Bob Brandy, yeah. Nobody remembers Bob Brandy but me and you.
And Ingrid.
Ingrid and the horse, Rebel.
Yep.
He was from Ringo, wasn't he?
I don't know.
I
He
think
drove a Rambler station wagon.
Well, they thought he killed his wife. Remember that?
He might have, because he was kind of jealous of her.
Remember that, though? That was the rumor that, because he was Channel 3 News, at Channel 3 News or something. I don't know why I remember that, stuff like that. But so,
I drove my Volkswagen through the Village Mall, going up that ramp at the white stores and go down there dodging all them park benches and trees and come out and jump the curb at Miller's.
did they try to catch you, or the security guard?
He might have come out and shook his billy stick at me, but he couldn't catch me.
Was it white stores from the beginning?
And Callaway's had a grocery store too, right across the corner from it. Hobby Lobby.
Lloyd Callaway.
Yeah, I think
Right.
it was. I think it was. It's
I remember the
Callaway's.
Hobby Lobby. Sold
And
cameras.
Sears was down there too. There's on the corner where I guess the bistro probably is. Sears and his Hobby Lobby, and I don't remember the rest of them. And then across over was a big old playground.
And you had Revco?
Which you start out Kohl's.
Kohl's, yeah. And they had a little, I sold grits there, that newspaper. Or I tried to. I think I sold 2. And then across the way was Kresge's.
Yeah.
And they both had a little, not a deli, but a little coffee shop.
And Kresge's had that riding pony that you put a quarter
Oh,
in.
yeah. I think Alan Jones still owns that. Portland. Now, didn't they move that for a while? They moved it to Tip Top?
Kresge's?
No, the horse.
They might have.
And then I think Alan bought it from them, if I'm not mistaken.
So I used to work on the ad machines up there at Tip Top. Laverne was in there in the office.
Oh, yeah. So you knew her pretty well.
Oh, yeah. I come walking in there and she's, there's my boy.
What was she like to you?
Joyful, cut up. She just, like she was my, kind of like a mama in a way. Because she always asked, how you doing? Asked you questions, you know.
Well, I remember going in there and she was in that back room where you kind of on
Raised
the right,
up.
raised. She must have been a kind of a bookkeeper type.
Yeah.
Does those times seem like forever to you, or does they seem short?
Sometimes you look at it one way and it seems forever, and then it seems like it's yesterday. The time just goes. You know, it took half your life to get to 30, and then the rest of it, phew.
Well, it's true, isn't it? I found out my 40s slowed down a little bit. But do you remember people watching maybe not want to go down these memory lanes, but I like to. But I said, who was I thinking about? Tip Top
It was the Watsons.
was the Watsons, and Toby Taylor.
He had his own place.
But
But
didn't he work at Tip Top for a while? Because I believe he used to give me quarters when I went in there.
He might have. I think Toby's used to be right there at 3 Point, around the corner from that Shell station at one time.
Yeah, where Joe Rogers' office supply is. That was Toby Taylor's. That's why the porch is raised. That's where they had the loading dock.
Now that building that City Auto Parts was in used to be Alan Sugar owned that building.
What did he do there?
I really don't remember what he did. I just know he was a silver-haired, wavy-haired guy, and he's into.
Was that close? Was that down the road from?
Just around the corner from the Shell station is that next building, and then Dr. Freeze was out here a little bit further. And then Linnell Harris had an apartment. It's 2-story, and it's L&H Rentals. Then you had Superior Cash Market.
Now go past there a little ways. Ice cream place.
Oh, it's the other way. Dooley's.
Dooley's, yeah.
I worked on their cash register. There's a big old brass upright.
Now, who was it on that? I remember now.
The Dooley's?
There was somebody that was related to them that I was talking to here a while back, and I had no idea that they were, that was their son or something. Who was
They
that?
had their own formula for one of their ice creams. I think it's that purple-looking stuff, and everybody went after it because it just tastes so good.
And I reckon nobody's ever matched it since, according to... Who was it that was telling me that here? I can't not remember who it was. It wasn't Hoyt Clark, was it?
I don't know. I remember Hoyt Clark. He was working at Goodyear across from behind Johnson Park back in the 60s.
That's where my Uncle Roy worked, or Jim, before he went to Dalton and made it rich. Goodyear. A lot of people worked at Goodyear.
And right beside Commercial Business Machines, we was across from Speck Hospital, and it was Commercial Business Machines, Bradley Interior, and B.F. Goodrich. And then if we went out our back door, there was a service area of B.F. Goodrich. And you look across the brick wall, and there was Phil R's mama's place.
And now, that's where the spring was, right?
It's further down just a little bit, behind the old Gulf Station.
Yeah. You remember the chicken coop? They called it the chicken coop where Glenn Ramsey has real estate office.
I remember Glenn Ramsey. I don't remember the chicken coop. Now, I service a rod shop in Chickamauga called the Chicken Coop.
Do you like going out? Now, when did you start saying, okay, I'm going to sell Mustang and Ford parts?
I was working at Jack Cunningham's, and I had a few Mustangs.
Like what? How old were you?
Probably 30. And there's somebody come in there one day, and they said, if somebody would just start a parts yard, some people call them junk yards, but I call them parts yards. If somebody just do a parts yard and specialize in something, people would come further because they know you'd have it. And so I thought, yeah, I believe I'll do that. And then I started just collecting Mustangs.
Where'd you start collecting them at?
Just out of the trader.
But I mean, where'd you put them at your house or what?
Out there on that 2 acres.
Did you already have the 2 acres?
Yeah. But I had a few Mustangs just before that.
But did you already have that property on Power?
I bought that in 1978, And it actually, I put in, back in when you could buy field dirt for $10 a load, I probably put $5,000 worth of field dirt in there. It didn't have all these here rules and regulations
yeah.
and people checking
Yeah.
at you and
Yeah.
stuff, but we cut a lot of the trees out. And
Why did you buy that? For that reason, or did you have another reason?
I had another reason. I was needing a place to live and I wanted a garage and there's already a garage there. The Dugans, Tim Dugan and his daddy actually owned it, but Tim Dugan worked in that garage. And the old house had burnt, and so I could just move a house trailer in, and the power pole's done there. All I had to do is get the service on it. And of course, I didn't know that the sewer was a 35-gallon barrel in the ground.
It wasn't that uncommon then.
And so it just took off from there.
So you started living there, and you said, "Hey, maybe I could specialize in selling parts."
I started doing the parts just right away. I mean, I was already working at parts stores. When I left commercial, I went to Hall Chevrolet Parts Department, which back then you couldn't hardly get a job. It took years and time to get your foot in the door. Worked there a year, asked him for a raise. If he'd give me a nickel an hour, I'd have been happy.
Jack.
Yeah, but he's tightwad and he wouldn't do it. And so I quit. And Fat Cat was managing Wildwood Auto Parts, and he hired me. Okay, I worked there for a year, and Fat Cat would have given me a raise, but it was above him. Jack Dugan had to be the say-so, because he owned Wildwood Auto Parts. And I asked Jack for a raise, and he said, "Well, let me think about it." And I think a week went by, and I went over there. I called him up, and I said, "What do you think, Jack?" He said, "Come over here, I need to talk to you." I went over there to Car Parts, and he said, "I don't hardly see how I can do it." I said, "Did you look at the sales records? When this is like one Saturday, 5 guys is in there, and their biggest day is 1,200. Me and Fat Cat and the delivery boys in there the next Saturday, and our littlest day is 800, and our biggest day is 1,500 to 2,500, back in them days."
Yeah.
And he said, "I just can't hardly do it." And I said, "Well, okay, I'm gone." And I worked a week's notice out, and then I worked for Daddy painting houses for part of a summer, and then everybody started telling me, call Jack Cunningham, he needs you. And Jack had started Cunningham Auto Parts up at the old Honda Center up there at Sadley Highway. I went up there and he hired me. Well, he had 2 guys in there. They's good parts guys, but they'd been in it so long they just dragged your feet. That was Bill Hill and Chester Collins. And they come from Dealers Auto Parts. I took such a load off of Jack, he couldn't even catch a phone. I wouldn't let him. Cunningham's, because that's what I was used to. And he called me in the office like 3 weeks later, maybe in 4 weeks. He said, "Did you look at your paycheck?" And I said, "No." He said, "You need to look at it." He gave me $25 a week raise without me asking for it. So that was big stuff then.
Yeah.
So I was loyal to him until he got too much on the books and things was tightening up, and he'd moved down to that new location across from Dairy Cream, and we had like 5 counter guys, and most of them had kids at the time. And I said, "Jack, lay me off. They got to support their families. Lay me off. I'll build carburetors out in my garage. If you need me, I'll come in." And I'd come in every now and then and go help collect for him.
But so when did you start saying, "Okay, I'm going to start selling parts out on Old Power Line Road"?
When he laid me off at my request, I already had a little big deal where I'd go to swap meets and down to Cleveland Speedway and sell masks and face shields and gear lube and stuff. And so I got me a source, And so I started selling parts out of my trailer I lived in. I had these little guest checks like they take your order at the Shake Shack, and people come in and they pay for them ahead of time. I go twice a week to Chattanooga and pick them up, bring them back, and I had them lined up against the wall in my living room, and they done paid for them, so I didn't have no money tied up. I was making a clean 10%.
Off of parts?
Off parts.
Specifically Ford parts?
No, it was any kind of automobile repair.
So you were
parts.
sort of a courier, sort of a...
Mm-hmm. And so then it just growed. Jack Dugan said I couldn't start as an independent. I had to be a chain, you know, like
Yeah, that wasn't true, was
American Parts.
If you just answer the phone and do what you say, you'll beat the other competition once every time.
Mm-hmm.
There's So did you just sell? Did you ever build another building to keep all this stuff in, or did you just?
Yes, the next thing from that trailer, I bought a trailer from J.D. Pullen that had been on fire, and I remodeled it. And Jerry Wilson come and done some remodeling in the main part of it, and then Don Enscore built a section on the back of it. And so I put pegboard on the walls and put parts in there and sold out of it. Then I built a bigger building to lease as a machine shop. Well, it didn't last long. Him and his wife got into it, and he moved to Knoxville. And so I moved the auto parts into that building, and I had a lot more shelves and stuff, room then.
Did you have a lot of walk-in stuff, or?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you had your own parts place there. They came to you, didn't
Mm-hmm.
they? You didn't rely on.
For 40 years. And I wasn't forced into quitting. I just got tired of standing 9 hours a day.
Well, that's a success story, wasn't it?
To me, it was.
I mean, 40 years just selling parts.
I tell you a good example. This customer I got in Midtown, which is outside Kingston, I got word that he needed a clip man. So I went up there, and it seemed like it was forever getting up there. First time I went. So I walked in, and I asked, who do I need to see? And they said, Mike. Well, he was in another room at the time, and they said, well, so-and-so. It kind of put me off a little bit, you know. And I said, well, here, I heard he needed the clip man. And I said, here's my card. And if he decides he wants to use me, just have him call me. And so this guy comes out of the office, gets that card out of that guy's hand, and he's Snakeman Enterprises. He said, I used to come down to your place when I was a teenager buying Mustang parts. So we hit it off, and now, right, he's one of my best customers. I'm buying from him, selling him now, instead of him coming buying from me down there, you know.
But you did that pre-internet.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
The only thing I ever done on the internet is in 2005, my daughter we got a computer, and she would sell stuff on eBay for me. And the biggest item I ever sold was a set of 1970 426 Hemi CUDA exhaust manifolds.
was that eBay stuff a big success, or?
Yeah.
But prior to that, it was just strictly
Word of mouth and phone.
Did you go out on the road and try to attract business?
Now, I would go to swap meets and meet people, and I'd have collectible stuff, and people would pick up on it, and they'd come from whatever town they're from. And I've got a friend now that used to come from Canada. He lives in Indiana, and he's trying to buy a property in Arizona. But he was a teenager when he first started coming to my place from Canada and buying cars and taking them back with an old two-wheel trailer.
Mm-hmm. But how could you get the word out enough to make a living? There was really nothing. You couldn't do mail outs.
Mm-mm.
It was just.
I didn't even have statements.
So how in the world did you do it?
Cash. Now I got a credit card machine, and real late, 99. It was compatible for the crisis that was going to take place in 2000.
Oh, yeah.
And I kept it for a few years, but it started costing me money and this, and that, and whatever, so I went strictly back to cash or check.
So you just write it down on a piece of paper and that's your bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
So you kept your overhead way low,
Yep.
obviously.
Yep.
Did you find you could pretty well make it on 10%?
When they was paying for it out front, I could, but when I started having to buy it and sit on it a little bit, I had to have more profit.
Did you have a figure in mind that what that profit was, or did you just assume it was a little more?
It was a little more. I didn't.
15%,
Until I
20%?
learned the formula. Times 112 is 10%, and times 118 is 15%, 125 is 20%, 134 is 25%, 143 is 30%, 167 is 40%. That's a true markup.
Not many people know that.
Mm.
See, when I build for people and they say, oh, you're building this building, you're making 10%, but really I'm just making 95% because I'm part of the 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to go times 1.18 was
Mm-hmm.
15%.
Mm-hmm.
So you just did that on the calculator, and that was $2 calculator.
Yeah, I was on a little solar power. I did have one regular, little bigger Casio, I think.
But boy, that was something to get and it was mostly just Ford parts or any parts.
No, I had to sell Chevrolet parts. I used to kid them Chevrolet boys. I got to sell us generic parts to make a living. Because they kid me all the time.
Yeah. So, well, boy, you really made it. You just branded yourself and didn't even know you was doing it.
Mm-mm. You see what a snake will do for you?
Yeah. Where do you think you got that? You have to have some business sense.
Well, here's what me and Victor Hicks both rely on. So, he sells parts, always has.
Yeah.
Well, Napoleon Bonaparte Hicks used to be one of them horse and buggy salesmen. So we just we say we're descendants of him.
Mm.
He sold fix-all medicines and this and that. And
So you're just a salesman.
Basically.
But there's got to be still something more to it than that.
You got to have the want to. That's just like remembering stuff. People says, how you remember that? How you remember that? Because I want to. It's like things happening on a certain year or a certain date. Or I kid some people. How I remember it is I kung fu the elephant over in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and elephant's got a good memory.
Yeah.
They knock your teeth out too.
That's what they say about elephants, that they have. The only reason they say that is because they go. Why is it they say elephants have a good memory? Because they go back. They go. They said, I forget what the saying is, but they've said that forever. Got a memory like an elephant. I remember Doyle Cry. They used to say he had a. Remember Doyle Cry?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What was it, Doyle Cry? He did about. He was
Key
real.
Street Motors.
Key Street. He was real successful, wasn't he?
Yep.
Up until a point.
I remember when he brought a load of Panteras in at Tractor Trailer. They had like 5 Panteras on it. Terry Morrow used to work there. James Garner worked there. Eddie Phillips worked there. There's a lot of people who worked in the cleanup area of it.
James Garner was
From McDonald. They call him Biggin. Big Man Garner.
Yeah. Now, car parts, back in the day, they had 2 drivers there for them, didn't they, all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Was it, who were they brothers?
Larry Morris was his best one.
Kind of a heavy guy. Big guy?
No, that might have been Guy. His real name Guy.
Yeah.
But Larry Morris was the one that Jack Dugan loved.
Boy, they sold a lot of parts, didn't they? And they had that.
And Jack was a big name. When you go to one of the American Parts seminars in Atlanta, Jack Dugan was like a king to them.
He sold those Didn't he have some off-brand stuff he sold too? That'd make everything. Bigby or something.
I don't know. He had a lot of big A stuff. They made a lot of their own stuff or jobbed it out and had it boxed in their name, but
maybe it was Big A. Maybe it was Big A Auto Parts.
Poweretti's was a
Yeah.
The ignition was Poweretti, but it was Big A Poweretti.
Do you think that the reason you were into the automotive stuff was because growing up that was the thing? I mean,
Willard Thompson taught all us boys in Taylor's community how to work on cars. And I give him a rose before he ever passed, because there's things he told us, things we did that made something in life.
do you think that if he was in computers, you'd be successful in that business now, or would it matter?
I kind of liked it in the day, but then when I got out of it, I have nothing to do with it. I got an iPad.
But when you, why did you decide to close down?
Well, I started selling fasteners, and I get a ride and see more people, see more things, and there's a better markup in it too. And I enjoy it.
They're not as heavy.
Right.
So you go around selling fasteners to companies that need it. So you're selling sort of nickel and dime type stuff.
Yeah, like 100 Christmas tree push-ins.
Yeah.
Common thing you see.
Yeah.
A box of 100 is $5.85.
We call them fish hooks in the construction business.
Okay.
Well, they're handy, aren't they? They'll do anything.
It's amazing what they hold.
Oh, it's unbelievable. You can't pull them out. Once you put them in, that's it. And zip ties. I bet you sell a lot of zip ties.
I do.
Who do you sell for? So you're doing it again.
I went to work for C&L Enterprises and worked part-time 2 years. And then he wanted me to come full-time, and we agreed on a price, but it didn't work out. And so I wasn't going to go into it, but I got home 2 days after I turned in the truck, and here was a fastener book in the mail. And I thought, well, I can buy that, mark it up 10%, and still stay in business. So I started doing that in 2007.
You keep things simple, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
That's a gift, isn't it?
They make fun of me writing so little and making notes on everything. But then when I take my paperwork to the CPA, they brag on it because it's so neat. They thank my wife. And she said, I didn't do it, he did it.
You do have good penmanship.
Well, this is just shorthand here.
You know, I write sometimes without vowels. It speeds it up. You can pretty well tell what a word is without a vowel if you're just writing fast.
Well, I'm in automotive. A valve is the intake valve and exhaust valve.
But you would have probably been successful no matter what you was thrown into. Was education not a big thing for you, going to college or anything like that?
I went to McKinsey Business College for 1 year. And then I went to vocational school in Athens 2 years, taking auto mechanics. And I enjoyed it.
But now, nowadays it would be all Tesla stuff, wouldn't it?
Yeah, about it. But you see them big, you got to watch them batteries. They catch on fire, you can't put them out.
Do you think they'll ever figure that out?
I don't know. I'm sure they will if they can send somebody to the moon, you know.
But they still have to have fasteners. They can't.
The batteries don't hold them together.
You sort of switched with the times, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
Could you think you could have sold your business, or you still getting calls?
I still get calls. I pulled Saturday morning about $160 worth of stuff out of the. No, it was Friday morning out of there, and then took it over. I got a kind of like a thrift store, but it's a variety store on Spring Place Road, 2248 Spring Place Road. It's called Three Doors Down.
Uh-huh.
And I sell anything from car parts, carburetor kits, skulls, Avon cars, you name it.
Mostly in the automotive type stuff?
Well, it started out that way, but it's come into anything I see. It looks weird when I'm out on my routes.
So you think you can put it down there and mark it up just a little bit and pay the rent?
Yeah.
You have somebody that works there?
We just open 2 days a week. I got a booth. My wife's got the back booth, and Jimmy Patterson's got this booth. And we pay to the Calfies.
You have a, yeah, I'm wearing their hat. We'll all be paying to the Calfies before you know it, won't we?
Mm-hmm.
Does, you're an innovator. Or are you one that just uses what works in the past? Which is it?
Probably what works in the past. I mean, I ain't no way thinker or header.
But you keep it simple. You cut the fluff out and just take it down to the bare bones.
I have nothing luxury extra. I just make it work.
Which one of the steels were like that?
I really don't know.
I mean, Robert really wasn't. He wasn't.
Say just 3 boys.
This
Daddy,
or that.
Daddy wasn't. Daddy did. He didn't hardly know how to wire a taillight in.
Now Margaret would have kept it simple. She wouldn't have added nothing.
Now Daddy does simple stuff, but he didn't go over and beyond what he could do.
Maybe the Hancocks. Maybe no, that was your mother's. What was your
Frazier.
Frazier. I don't know if that'd be it.
Her daddy was Leonard Frazier, and they named Frazier Road after him. And then he had Gail Frazier was his only son, and Linnell Frazier, Reba Frazier, Imogene Frazier, and Oleta Frazier, which is Oleta Omby, Tillis Omby's mama. Different bunch of Ombys.
That Tillis that works for the county.
No, he works for Cherokee Construction.
Oh. No, I had the wrong
Bonnie guys.
I had the wrong one. So, wasn't there a Frazier that had the business machines, worked at the business machines? Wanda Frazier?
Yeah. That was Gail's ex-wife.
That's right.
She was a Hughes originally.
Mm-hmm.
And her daddy had a hangar out there at Airport Gulf.
Where's the Airport Golf?
When you come out 64 and you turn on Randolph Samples, there used to be a Gulf station right there. And
On the corner?
Yep, and Hall's Barbershop. That's where the road took it. All right, that field was an airport. Across
So
the road,
would there still be tanks in the ground?
I don't know where they got their fuel from. But they had windsock out there at them hangars.
So Hall's Barbershop, that would have been, that Garnet Hall's daddy?
No, it was, I think, Flavis and John Edward. John's still alive. Flavis died.
So there was Garnet,
Garnet was their
Flavis,
brother.
Mavis.
Yeah, they lived in that house out on Bates Pike, had 14 halls in it.
Yeah, Garnet used to say they had more halls, their house had more halls in it than any house in Cleveland.
Yep.
Now, let's see. Who was there? It was Mavis, Flavis, Garnet, Bobby, and Tony Kaywood, his mother, was a sister.
Yeah. And then, of course,
And there was
John and Hilda and
Hilda, yeah. One of them worked at the Waffle House. May still work there. That may be Mavis.
I don't know.
Boy, it's a small world.
And then, they had a station this side of the Shake Shack at one time.
The Halls? Mm-hmm. I think Garnet used to walk there to work.
Right there where Meadow Lane goes through and comes
Oh,
out.
Larry. There was Larry Hall.
Yeah.
Oh, they were all work.
Dole Hall.
Dole, yeah, that's what I'm Dole, yeah. Boy, I liked Dole. He was one of my favorite people. He was different.
Oh, yeah.
He was different.
And John goes by John, but in grammar school we called him John Edward. I don't know why, but I think that's his middle name.
They must have done something different because Larry and John and Dole were the only three normal names.
Mm-hmm.
Now Bobby, he had an auction there for a while.
Yeah, on real estate.
And he had an auction out behind his house on weekends. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. I didn't go to it, but I remember it.
I went to it once or twice. And his, let's see, Tom Orr. Remember Tom Orr? He was. How was he related to Bobby?
He's married to one of the sisters.
That's right. That's right. Let's see. I used Garnet for a carpenter. He was a good carpenter, and he had his son-in-law was working with him, and Dole was roofing. And let's see. Anyway, so I had a customer that I was building for, and Garnet came. You know, he had a little bit of a temper.
Oh, yeah. I always did.
He always did. I said a little bit, not to offend anybody, but he had a bad temper, really. But anyway, he came out one day and he threw his tool belt in the back of the truck and said, "I'm getting out of here." He said, "I got one sleeping with my sister and one sleeping with my daughter." One was married to his sister and one was married. Didn't Bobby have a place there on 64 Highway in the Rock House? Remember the Rock House? Mm-hmm. What was it? No, was that his real estate office?
You talking about the little rock house right there on top of the hill across from Betty Brown's or down from the Burrells?
Yeah.
I don't know if he had office there or not, but, you know, that was next to the entrance to the first drive-in theater in Cleveland.
Boy, that's something, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was the name of it?
I really don't know. It was before my time, but I had Jack Ingram, Gil Frazier, both told me about it. Mm-hmm. Seemed like a casing on the ice house. I got it wrote down somewhere.
Steve Cason?
I don't.
I knew his son, I believe. They were rough, if it's the same ones, the Casons.
Okay, the Casons had a lot of stuff on 64 Highway. Drive-in theater was behind the ice house, and I don't remember who it was exactly. I'd have to look through the notes and stuff, but you know, people didn't know that there was so much stuff on.
All right, so start from where? Start from
Hill Street.
Hill Street, yeah.
Just name them all.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say how many things we had.
Because now that was that a
This is 50s and 60s and 70s.
yeah. So it was high class, I guess.
Well, it had a lot to offer.
Had lots of
I read a lot of the Bradley County books and Cleveland books and stuff. They didn't mention 64 Highway. And I thought, well, there's a lot of stuff went on out through there that somebody needs to know about. Mm-hmm. And we had 4 restaurants, 3 motels, 1 pottery company, 1 airport, 2 drive-in theaters, 5 service stations, a dance hall, 2 nightclubs, 1 salvage yard, numerous car lots, 1 dog kennel, 2 ice stores, 10 grocery stores, 2 truck stops, 2 tractor dealerships, 1 hardware and feed store, and 2 fairgrounds, and 1 new car dealership.
from High Street, from Hill Street
to 411 Viaduct. We had all that.
and see, in my era, there's not been anything there.
Mm-hmm.
Where were the motels at? I guess the one was.
You had Cherokee Motel.
Which was where?
Right at the corner of Randolph Samples.
On the other side.
It's on the right side going out. Right past Shake Shack.
Well, I don't remember that.
You had Turkey Grill before you got to the motel.
Don't remember that.
Tinsley started it. And
Who?
then I've got it.
Kenneth Tinsley's?
No, it's a different Tinsley. I've got it somewhere or another. But one Tinsley sold it to the other Tinsley. And then when the road come through, they moved up here on 25th Street.
So when the road came through, it took it?
Mm-hmm.
So what was there, just a two-lane road
Just
on it?
2 lanes. 64 was 2 lane.
So everything that they took is
Most
made.
of it is on the right-hand side of the road going toward 411.
Now, why would people stay at a motel there going that way? Was it more like a
It's just like one of these little ones you see in a movie.
yeah? Well, there's a name for them, isn't there?
A lot of them call them motor courts. And
Yeah,
stuff.
motor courts. That's it, motor courts.
And we had Smoky Mountain Motel.
Smoky Mountain Motel. Now that's still apartments, isn't it? Isn't it apartments now?
I think it still
I mean,
might
it's
be.
pretty rough. Or somebody's fixed it up now a little bit.
Yeah, that was Whitten's. They had Smoky Mountain Dog Kennels and Smoky Mountain Motels, and the road went right beside the motel at Hollow Road, but they moved it out here now.
Oh.
But from there at Hill Street, there used to be a black man they called Big Finger.
Uh-huh.
His place was on the left.
What'd he do?
Went around and collected boxes and compressed boxes and sold paper.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And right there on the corner, later Billy McLean built a building. It's still there before you get to the scrapyard place. But that used to be a sunk-in area, and it was Dixie Fairgrounds or Dixie Park. The Reimers give that to the black in the 50s.
So that was sort of before you get to the dump. Is that right?
The dump was down Hill Street. This was going out just on 64 Highway. Here was Hill Street, took you to the dump. Billy McLean's building was there later, and they're still there. But that area right there out to nearly where Bates Pike peels off was sunk down in there at Scrap Iron Place.
Mm-hmm.
That used to be real deep down in there, and they had a wooden wall, and they played ball, had circuses and fires and stuff there. And then you had 64 Truck Stop.
Which was where?
It's where Ronnie's Tree Service is now.
So that was a truck stop,
64 Truck Stop.
regular restaurant,
Yep.
etc.
Mm-hmm. And they'd answer the phone, 64, 64. Right there in the forks where Bates Pike peels off, L.O. Campbell had a little convenience store where Tree Trimmer's daddy's got a body shop and got a house there now, you know. Then the pilot station.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had Roy Michael lived out here and had a little scrap place behind his place. And then Waterloo Amico. Jerry Hendricks used to work there.
Amico?
Yeah. Ernest Wooten started it, and then it had different owners over the years. And across there where the plaza is on the left,
Mm-hmm.
that was Ridge Ramler. Max Finkel had a Nash Ramler dealership, car dealership.
I've seen pictures of that.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Logan's got pictures of that. That was a big deal, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then when you peeled off Old Power Line Road, where the electric company, Boards, no, what that electric company is, used to be S&S Skating Rink.
You know, I remember, I think I went there one time.
Probably did. And
Because it hadn't been closed. Well,
and where the fence place is, on the other side of the road, used to be Roy Hicks's garage. He was a mechanic. It used to be at the Chrysler place, and went out there and opened up his own place. And then when you dropped off the hill, at the foot of the hill was Big Ballard, Old Man Ballard.
Ballards.
And there was a road right across from his driveway that went around by the old Oak Grove Baptist Church. You know, it's being closed
And
off.
it dead ends now, right?
Yeah. You have to come in from Bates Pike.
Yeah.
And then there's pine trees all on the left, way back there.
Now, when they brought in APD 40, we're getting ready to get rid of a lot of stuff that was there, right?
Yeah, there was a township where part of APD 40 is, the Cloverleaf. If you come
When you
up,
say township, what do you mean?
it's just like, I can't remember the name of it, but
I mean like Tasso or?
yeah, or something.
But they didn't have their own government, right?
You come in, of course you could go in this way back then, but when they closed it off, I used to go to Trinity Chapel, which is where that old Oak Grove Baptist was. Mm-hmm. We was going to give some property down here to try to get that right of way to the township, because if you owned it, you could close it, but if you didn't own it, you couldn't. And Whomper didn't want to sell the trailer. They had a little rental trailer on a piece of property, wasn't it? It's bigger. The trailer was bigger than the property was.
Now, that township was not. They didn't have their own government, right?
I don't think
Just
so.
a little community.
Yeah,
All right.
but that road can't be closed unless you own that land. The rest of it's done closed.
Yeah.
Past, there used to be state picnic tables down there. Past we turned into Oak Grove. They used to put them 55-gallon barrels on a concrete pole on a picnic table, and then just about before where Circle K is, there's on the right.
On the right.
Used to be a sagegrass field and it had one oil well. Them old donkey-looking headed pumps.
Did they get oil out of there?
I'm sure they did at times, but most times they drill them things and they stay stagnant.
So there was never any big.
And then you got Durkee Road on both sides, and then Gillen's Peach Stand was on the corner there before the tornado. But it burnt once, and then a tornado got it in the 70s. And then they moved down further. And then Flat Rock was where the state troopers used to put a tripod. They didn't have as fancy stuff. They had a tripod with a cable run back, and they'd hide in wood and then go after you.
They were sneaky back then.
And that's the entrance to Simpson Construction now.
Oh. Yeah, close to Dixie Drive.
Yep. All right, then you got Gillen's on the other side. And then the next thing was E.L. Hall Grocery. That was the Hall daddy.
That was Garnett's and Larry's daddy.
Uh-huh. And behind it was the Casanova Grill.
Casanova Grill?
Yeah, it had a nickname called the Bloody something other.
What year would that have been?
Early 60s. Anyway, and then on the left, you had Bryant Grocery, where that two-story red brick that sells antiques.
Yeah.
That used to be Bryant Grocery. Simon Bryant built that years ago. And then where the restaurant's in and out,
Yeah, there you go.
that was Bowman Antiques.
Was Bryant's a busy place?
I never did shop there, so I really
But I
don't.
mean, they were there for a while.
Yeah. I mean, he had money. Of course, his son-in-law run over him, killed him,
didn't know
George
that.
DeLay. He ran over him.
Let's see.
Simon was in a wheelchair.
Let's see. Hang on. Let's see. Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah.
And then the Shake Shack used to be closer to the road, and then when the highway come through, they had to move up where they're at now. And then down where the aluminum siding place is,
Cleveland Aluminum.
okay, that was Nipper Grocery. Had gas pumps, and it was Nipper Grocery. And then right beside it was the concrete driveway that went to the Cherokee Drive-In Theater.
Oh.
It goes back.
Which Ben Moore owns that now, I think.
Yeah. And then there was a little, of course you had Shake Shack on their side, and then there was a little campground, and then you had the Cherokee Grill restaurant. And
Cherokee Grill was on the left.
right.
On the right.
All right, then you got Cherokee Motel. And then over where Jackie Evans is now was Sonny Nicholson Tractor. Sold new case tractors. And then there's Randolph Samples and Menace Road. And then on the corner was Airport Gulf. I don't remember who owned it, but it was a Gulf station. And then Hall's Barbershop was in that same little corner. And then, of course, airport hangars and stuff. And on the other side of the road, where Jackie Evans parks them trailers now, used to be a Clyde Step had a service station, and then a big building behind it Jack McClellan got later. And then there's a little building behind it, and a guy built airplane motors and airplanes and stuff. And then you had White's Boat Marina on that side, about where they sell them little buildings and stuff now.
Yep.
Then Hancock Cave.
Which is what?
Where Kiesler.
Right.
Cason's actually owned that property, but the name of the cave is Hancock Cave.
Isn't that got ponds and stuff in there now?
No, that's when all them bamboos is growing up, and Paul Kiesler done welding and stuff, and his kids inherited it.
I don't think we're to the ponds yet.
No, you talking about the old fish
Yeah,
hatchery?
the old fish hatchery.
Then the Burrells, they've been there forever. Then the Ice House.
Which was whose? Was that Noe Jones? No, not
Noe Jones had an enamel house down there.
Now he was related to. Now Noe Jones was Jackie G's uncle.
I'm not sure, but I know Jackie G's done the taxis
Yeah, the
at
taxis,
Farm Bureau, and she was a Pierce.
Well, I think Noe was Ruth Pierce's brother.
Could have been. Anyway, I didn't know I was going to get into all that, or I'd try to have it just a little bit.
Let's see. Now Noe.
He was on the right down in the holler.
That was Alan Jones's uncle.
Really?
Uncle, I believe. Yeah, I believe Noe. I
Or
forget.
didn't he work at the enamel plant or something, or so?
Yeah, and
he'd bring him panels,
Yeah.
and he.
Well, that was common then, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
the whole house.
The whole
enamel.
house was a.
Mm-hmm. And up behind the Ice House was the drive-in theater where they just graded out a big bank and hung sheets on it to show the movies on. So you drop off the hill, and there's Lyle Road. And, of course, Snort had to move from out on the main road to that road. Used to Miss Lyle and Mr. Smith and Cecil Thompson on the other end, the only ones on that road. And then Snort's was up there on the right in an old Pure station. And then Holler Road was right beside Smoky Mountain Motel. Well, across the road was Luther Campbell's store, and he sold to the Wintons. And he went back there where they have all them Christmas lights and stuff, where Bobby Reimer lives. That road, instead of doing this, used to go straight out through there.
Boy, people living out there now would never know this.
Then the Smoky Mountain Kennels was up behind Smoky Mountain Motel. Mr. Ash had a little store and sold produce and stuff before you get to Bruce's old rental warehouses.
Yeah. Was that Grover Ash's daddy?
I think there's Ken. I don't know about that. And then you got Starlight Lounge, which burned.
Yeah. Was that the Becks?
No, that was Chase, Bill Chase. He used to notarize titles with silver dollar. He turned that wing side over and hit it with a hammer, notarized title. Bill Chase. All right, and then you had a crow's nest up on the hill. I think one of the Casons actually started it probably.
Probably, yeah.
And then, of course, now you got that winery and stuff, but there used to be a pink stone building right there before you got to the winery, a house.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Okay, that was Snort's house, G.W. Howe. And then where the lake is on the other side of the road, right, Kinser,
Didn't that used to be a tractor place?
Williams Farm Equipment.
That's where John Lovingood's daddy worked there.
John Deere dealer.
I think he may have had a heart attack out there, but anyway.
And of course, you got that road goes that way and Kinser goes this
Yeah.
way. And then where the Tobacco Mart or whatever you want to call it now is,
I renovated that for them.
that used to be Irvin Kinser's hardware and feed store originally. And then his rafters, and then it's something else.
And then they added to it and added to it.
French Kinser owned all that land.
Because it's Kinser Road.
And he give that property and helped get his son started in business. And then right past it, his sister started Parkway Grocery, and that's where that church is now.
And wasn't it? And it became IGA, right?
Yep. All right, across the road, before it was a flea market, was a DX gas station. And Fuzz Bryson lived in a brown 2-story house beside the DX station. And then where the flea market was an old chicken house turned into a pottery company. And then it was the flea market, and then it burned.
Yep.
And then Mr. Stiles owned it. And then you had Broomfield Grocery on the right. Before you get to the big lumberjack, it's just...
Yeah, the lumberjack guy.
Okay, you had Broomfield Grocery, but just between Broomfield's and Old Kinser Road was Pleasant Garden Dance Hall. Popper when the wars were going on.
Yeah.
And then that stone building across the street, right there where you turn on Reimer Road,
Yeah, that's where Bobby had a place there. I
Mike
believe.
Burrell owns that building right now, but I believe it was Wade Stewart built that, and it's Stewart Grocery originally. When the road come through, Virgil Reimer Grocery was over on the side where the lumberjack was, and the road was getting them, so they went over and bought Stewart Grocery and moved Virgil Reimer Grocery across the road. And then, of course, that road goes to the old fish hatchery that Mitch used to run.
Yeah.
And
Got all the ponds on it.
Yeah. And we used to throw cherry bombs in, blow them up in cold weather. All right. And on the corner where Ocoee Water is, used to be Johnson Motor Court. Is a motel.
Now, I remember that being there. Had short ceilings.
Yeah. Okay. He went across the street to Virgil Reimer Grocery and read in a Bible that was laying there. Not I'm a religious person, but I don't know what his deal was. This is just stuff that was told by old timers.
Yeah.
He walked back across the street and killed his wife, and then he went back over and told Scort Bryson to call the law.
Because he'd read the Bible in his mind.
Yeah, I guess. And then it was the Griggs people come in and bought it and run it. Hired Griggs, Petey Griggs, and then one of their little kids got killed going across the road there one time. All right, then right where that church is now, beside Ocoee Water, used to be Ruby's Grill, Ruby Rasburn. All right, then you had the Cleveland Fairgrounds that the Lewis boys owned. Which,
On the left?
where Stafford's got all that heavy equipment
yeah.
and stuff. That used to be Cleveland Fairgrounds. They had little go-kart tracks and had a racetrack out there and had events, had rodeos. And
A couple of preachings down there, I guess.
probably,
I'm sure.
and
Yeah.
it was, and then you got Osmond Road and that
Osmond Road, who was that named after?
Ollie Osmond. And I live in the old Ollie Osmond house, home place. There was one down closer to the creek, and it burnt, and he come up here and built this house in 1941. And then Mama and them added on to it in 1965. They sold some timber and made the house, got her a living room.
Was that, they had twin boys, right?
I never did know them, but you know, when you see some of these old deeds and stuff, there's awesome. It's all down in through there.
Yeah.
And there used to be a lake right there where that dollar store is, because I thought, now they gonna build that on that lake?
They don't know it, I guess. They didn't know it.
They found it out when they started trying to level dirt, and they had to fill in. But Waldo Davis used to have a brick house right there that faced 64, and that was his lake.
The Osmonds owned the Grand Lunch.
Yeah.
That was what it was.
Yep.
I was trying to think, yeah.
You're right. And then right past him was two body shops, and there was a Davis guy in one of them, and Lewis Brothers started their auctions in the other one. Then they've got...
Before the feud.
Oh, yeah. And they left there and went over to the other side of the road and built that big building.
Yeah.
Okay. And the next thing was on top of the hill was Gresham Trailer Sales, where it flattens out up there. And I can't remember that guy. He's in some kind of real estate or something. Big feller and all the time mouthy. He bought that property, but it was actually originally Gresham Trailer Sales.
I know who you're talking about. Go ahead.
And then next thing was Paul Brown's Truck Stop at the top of the hill.
Golly.
All right. Then when you dropped off toward London Acres, they used to be one of them state picnic tables and such heavy. And Flavis Hall and Junior Bishop jackknifed a car that's taken to the drag strip right there and turned around and went home. Then you got Cason's Grocery, which is still there.
It's still there.
Yep.
And they got the apartments down below, don't they?
Mm-hmm. All right, and then as you dropped off the hill before you got to the old Benton Bank at Ocoee, remember that old house that was there, and then it ended up burning? But it stayed, no paint on it, stayed old wood looking for years.
Where the bank is now?
No, it's back his side.
Don't remember that.
It was on that, ended up being some of Frank Lowry's property.
Oh.
All right, that was the Cowden, Cowden house. They made furniture. Curtis Kimsey's wife was a Cowden. Curtis Kimsey and his wife was the mama of Edna Hedrick, MC Hedrick's wife. Small world.
It's a small world.
And next thing you know, there used to be a little old station right there on the left that Robert White's daddy owned, and it seemed like on the other side of the road is the guy that bootlegged Coors, and he owned a firecracker stand that blowed up. And
he owned the one in Polk that blew up.
Yeah. And then you're at the viaduct.
Do you update this as something new comes along?
Not really. I did this on Whoop Radio March 16th, 2013.
Somebody needs to help you keep that up.
Hey, like how small that print
That is neat, right? Let me show. Let's show this camera, Glenn.
Go ahead.
Oops. Well, that is really
this
something.
Is Hill Street here, and then it continues over here to the viaduct.
You need longer paper.
Yeah.
Now you can't do North Lee Highway. That's because this was your stomping ground.
Yeah.
You would have. I remember a few of those things, but never to that magnitude of how busy that road was.
And that's what got me was when it wasn't in them books. I thought, man, they left out that.
Because that's everything in there was prior to 1960, probably.
Yeah, 69 is when the road come through and it all started changing.
69. I was too young to remember. That's when I think I remember going with my mom and dad to the Cherokee restaurant, but I was thinking that was in town.
Well, they moved over here on 25th Street.
So that's where they came from.
I got that big Indian that was on that neon light. But the years it's deteriorated, the paint's come off of it and stuff, and a hailstorm hit it once. But
So the Cherokee Grill became the Cherokee Restaurant.
It was Cherokee Restaurant.
Which became Stadfield's, which became Zaxby's, I guess. Who owned the Cherokee Grill?
As Tinsley, I got it here somewhere at
And that wasn't. Was that the same Tinsley's that owned the restaurant up in Benton, as you're going towards Etowah on the left?
They was a Tinsley. It used to be over where Lottie's.
Yeah, Lottie's.
He was kin to him.
Yeah.
Sorry about not
So
having
take
that.
your time. We're no rush. You sort of look like a snake.
Oh well, I know I've got it here somewhere or another, but I didn't look in here real close. There's a blonde used to manage at 64. At Cherokee Motel, and one person said he drove a 56 Chevrolet and one drove a 57 convertible.
I guess at one time, wonder why people came down that road so much. I guess there was no 64 highway.
It was Old Copper Road.
Copper Road.
Before it was 64 Highway. They still little signs that says Old Copper Road on it.
Because that was coming from
Copper Hill.
And from
And a guy
Highway 11.
And that guy owned a copper mine. Lived over here next to Magic Chef at one time.
I had Captain Rott. Captain Rott. See, I had an actor come and play him.
Oh.
Yeah, you can see it online. I had him come.
Hoyt Foot.
Hoyt Foot.
Hoyt Foot owned the Ice House. Foot''. And Flavis Cason owned the Ice House and the Casanova Grill. And they called it the Bloody Bucket because a lot of stabbings and stuff went on. Noah Jones owned the Enamel House. Crow's Nest.
Noe.
Noe. Crow's Nest was opened by, I think, Lawrence Cason. Also started Cason Grocery.
See, I knew the son, Steve Cason. I believe maybe the grandson.
Jack Ingram's daddy was Flathead on Benton Pike. Mm-hmm. And he gave me a lot of information. He used to be fire chief or something one time. And Gale, when I got this information from Gale, he's 78 and Ingram was 72. And that was before whatever year I said that was, 13.
If you get a few more years, nobody will remember what you're going over here. You know it?
Mm-mm. No, you mentioned
Time marches on.
And just like when I was doing some research, you said you'd done something in Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
The Moon Glow.
Never heard of it.
Okay, it was the nightclub beer joint across on the right-hand side, right past Harbor. He made picture frames. Boy, it owned.
Was that where they used to? Eddie Cartwright said they'd go up there when they're running for politics. They'd go and politic in there on occasion.
Yeah, have a beer and eat a deviled egg.
Yeah, and that's where to try to get the votes.
Okay, Mark Edwards owned that in the years that I went there, but his daddy's the one that built it. But there's a drive-in theater that was back over the hill on that same property that was the Moonglow Theater.
See, I'd have never
Drive-in
guessed.
theater.
I'd have never thought that in a million years. A million years. You miss those days?
Not really. I got different outlooks on things. But it was fun.
Yeah.
I wouldn't I wouldn't change it. It was part of life.
It's
you know?
part of life, yeah.
I'm trying to. Oh, it was the Sugarloaf Lodge. Actually, it was the Johnson Motor Company out there that ended up being Hiawatha Inn later, and then Ocoee Water.
Well, there were a lot of gas stations through that one stretch of land.
Yeah.
We wouldn't think now about getting gas, but did the cars not hold that much gas, or did they just drink more?
They had big tanks.
I guess the gas stations
You didn't
only
have
had,
all these here fast places.
they only had 2 pumps, I guess.
Yeah.
And they were slower.
Yeah.
So if there's somebody there, you go to the next one.
If you want to try a slow one, stop at that little gas station in Varnell. I went in and asked him, I said, does them pumps work? He said, yeah. I went out there, and that's the slowest pumping.
Have you ever been to the one at Webb's store?
No.
You can go in and eat a hamburger, and it's still...
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's one reason they had that. They had so many.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't have thought about putting in 8 pumps like they got now, like Buc-ee's or Buckeyes.
Boy, man, that's a big place,
Yeah.
ain't it? Snort had a machine gun on top of his old building, the big building, and but it had a make-believe gun barrel. It's like a 50 caliber machine gun, but the gun barrel and housing was, I think, made of wood, and is set on a tripod. That building was built by Bert Inslee and Jack Inslee. And Snort went out and played cards, then bought the place from Inslee. Building was blue and white. There was homes across the street that next to where the trampolines was in the ground on South Lee Highway. They said here it is about where Easy Auto used to be, which is that car lot on the corner. G.W. Howe lived in one house, and Lucille Raper lived in the other house, which was Snort's sister. And
What about Q Hooper's place?
okay, now he was in on this here gambling at the old Snort's place.
Yeah.
He's in here somewhere.
Was he friends with the Lays?
I don't know. Anyway, that was E.T. Howe Service Station and Ice Company, where Cards is, or kind of right in there. And his name was Eldon Howe, E.T. Howe, and he was the daddy of G.W. Howe, which was Snort, and then Buster Howe was a brother, and his son was an intern or a doctor at Bradley Memorial. Lived on Smith Drive. The Eldon's home was in the Starview area.
I guess there was a road back there where the Starview is, right?
Well, when we went to Starview, we just come across the street there, and right there was the car lot, and over here was Holiday Inn.
Holiday Inn.
All right, you just drove right up there and about where Bradley Equipment Rentals is, and there was where you paid, and then Starview was all back in there. We used to come down that street, Grove Avenue, and jump out of Joe Stipp's daddy's truck. There'd be a whole load of us, and we'd all chip in a little bit, pay his way in, and we'd run up through a sagebrush field before they built Gibson's, and Larry Smith would climb across the fence and pull the wire up, and we'd all crawl under and split up, and then go down to the concession stand and get because we couldn't sit in that truck and watch movies. But
So you had to stay. You had to stand at the concession.
No, they had seating right in front of the concession stand.
Now Hoyt Fair worked there then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did he take the tickets in?
I'm wanting to think that he worked at where you paid when you went to concession stand. You talking about the one that failed?
Yeah, the one. Yeah, got in a wheelchair. Now, did they know that people were coming under the fence and it was okay, or
they'd have a guard in there every now and then. It would catch you and make you go pay or something, or tell you to leave, ask you to leave or something like that. But you know, people used to sneak in the trunks of them cars and pay $2 for two people or something up here, and
they had the speaker phones where you sat on the car.
Mm-hmm.
Did they have playground at the front?
Yep. Yeah, you see them down there swinging.
Because there's one in Blue Ridge that you can go to the scenic.
Yeah, I've been there.
I've been there too, and it really takes you back in time.
In a Midway in Athens.
I hadn't been there, but I've been to the one in Blue Ridge.
Cherokee Grill was started by Charles Tinsley. Then he sold out to M.L. Tinsley. Then the new 4-lane took the land and the grill, and he moved to 25th Street, and it's Cherokee Restaurant.
Cherokee Restaurant.
Anyway, it's interesting.
Wonder how they were related to Kenneth Tinsley.
I really don't know. Most of them was all kin to each other, and they all knowed how to make money.
Was that something they did out of necessity? Figured out they had to make money because farming was. I mean, when you said earlier, it was real hard to get a job. Was it harder to get a job back then?
It was pretty hard to get a job, especially in auto parts. That was how I got a job at Hall Chevrolet. Is Harry Kilpatrick, or Kirkpatrick, or what? Kilpatrick, I think it was. He retired. He had 2 elbows from leaning on that counter for many years, and Chunky Young was my boss, and we was at 5 Point. Hall Chevrolet was at 5 Point, and I got my foot in the door. I don't remember who told me to go try to get a job there, but that was hard to do back in that day. That's 70.
Was it hard to get other jobs?
Probably wasn't. I mean, I never have had that many jobs, really. I worked for Owens & Son Upholstery, hauling furniture.
Did they have, back then, did they have Social Security and Workman's Comp and FDIC and all these other things, or has that been added since then?
I know they had Social Security because they take it out of your check, you know. The rest of that stuff, I don't really know.
I guess a lot of those people were in Vietnam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were you were right before that or right after?
I went in '66. I went to Mackenzie College and I got a college deferment.
Mm-hmm.
And I got out of that and went to the vocational school for 2 years, '67 to '69, and then I got a deferment. And then I was on the low totem pole and could go any time, but it's 1970, they changed the typewriters at these old draft boards from them old Peck Underwoods and Rolls. Mm-hmm. And it was my job to take this woman that was with Selective Service and get these people converted over to this state-of-the-art typewriter and get rid of that old one. And these old women was, of course, I'm over 70 now, but back then they seemed like they was 70-year-old and over the hill. But I worked with them so good about getting them. I said, you can't make a mistake on it. You hit 2 keys, you had to hit backspace and go back, and I had to convince them. I went to Madisonville, Pikeville, just different towns, and this woman stayed in a motel, and I'd pick her up and take one of them typewriters or two, and we'd hit these draft boards. Well, when I did that, she said, "You're too valuable to go to Foot Army." She said, "It'll have to be a blown, full, wide open war before you'll have to go. When I get back, I'm going to see that you get a office deferment. If you get drafted, you'll be in clerical."
But it was getting about over by then anyway, wasn't it? By the time.
By the time that all happened, I was a low number. You know, they used to go by numbers.
Yeah, right.
Just how soon you might.
Well, it's all history. So, if you ever think about this, here we talk about this. Somebody that was alive in 1930, they'd say, "Well, y'all don't know nothing. Let me tell you what was on there then." You know, Captain Rock was bringing copper and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It might have been all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, Bud Holmes that built all these wild, exotic cars around town, them casket cars and skull cars and stuff. He went to Vietnam, and he was a gunner on a helicopter. And then Paul D flew a helicopter. So when they come back to stateside, they'd both be up at Fort Campbell, and of course Paul D was a captain. And one time, sometime Bud would ride in with him to Cleveland and then go back after the weekend.
Yeah.
And so Bud and his higher up was walking across the grounds there, and of course that guy had to salute Paul D, you know, and Bud did too. And he said, "Holmes, you going home for the weekend?" And he rolled his eyes like he wasn't gonna let him. And he said, "Well, I sure need somebody to ride with me to talk to. You're going with me," or something like that. So that guy couldn't say nothing because this was his superior.
Yeah.
And so they rode home together.
Things are now. Bud Holmes, he's friends with Elmer Earls, right?
Yeah.
You know Elmer?
Yeah. Hippie beads.
Hippie Beads, yeah. Well, I like Elmer.
See, Elmer was in the river when I bit the snake.
Oh, was Elmer there?
Yeah. Bud was too.
His brother?
No, Bud was. Bud Holmes was in the
Bud
river
Holmes,
too.
yeah. Because Elmer had a brother, right?
Yeah, he lives in Polk County. Charlie. He good guy.
So Elmer could testify that you did or didn't bite the head off the snake.
Yeah. He knows I bit it. I didn't. Bud tells the story that I bit his head off.
Well, everybody believe Elmer, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you'd believe Elmer no matter what. I believe Elmer before I believe myself.
You remember when he was we stand out in front of these schools and direct traffic?
Yeah.
A parent volunteer.
Yeah.
He did that at Ocoee Middle.
Elmer?
Yeah. And some people just didn't like his looks.
Was he dressed like he dresses now?
No, but
He's
he's
still,
Elmer.
Yeah, just Elmer.
Elmer.
Nicest guy you ever meet.
Elmer's a good welder.
Elmer, dude, if Elmer was, if he was the only one that, if they said, well, you're going to have open heart surgery and all we got's Elmer, I'd say, well, at least he's not going to mess up.
That's it. Yeah, you think it out.
He'd think it out. He'd figure it out. Well, anything else? I've really enjoyed this. What time is it, Gwen?
6:19.
6:19. We've covered a lot of ground, hadn't we?
Yeah.
I've tried to get Bud Holmes to come here, but he wouldn't do it.
I'm probably talking him into
Can you
it.
talk him into it? Can you get you and him come together?
Probably.
Well, tell him it's either you or Elmer. Right?
Yeah.
Hey, so you knew my dad know my dad good.
Yeah. We used to visit them because the age group visited back in the
Yeah.
day. You didn't have all these other activities.
Where'd you visit them at?
I can't remember where they lived at before, but then when they lived over next to Deer Park, we visited them over there too. Highland Avenue.
Oh,
area.
yeah. Oh, you mean,
Oh, your parents. Oh, you talking about Bobby?
yeah.
I just seen Bobby at events and Farm Bureau, and I knowed him from way back. I mean, because we just all seemed like family.
Yeah.
And we cut up at them Batman contests, you know.
He liked that, liked to go to those. And so you would go over to Jane, my grandmother, you'd go to her house when she was married to Jim Burris? Was it Jim?
Probably. I just remember.
So you were just there as a kid?
Yeah.
So back then you visited people.
You had friends that you would go visit them once every 6 months or every 3 months or something.
People don't do that now at all, do they?
That's just like, I can't even remember his name now. I used to have that body shop across from Car Parts years ago, and he lived out there on Durkee Road. Rogers, J.L. Rogers, and Toot. His wife was nicknamed Toot. We used to go visit them and Madge and Skeet Moore, and you just went and visited people.
Especially on Sundays, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a Sunday evening thing.
So you just get in the car and go visit and stop and say, how you doing? And
That's it.
did you ever get to feel like, man, why don't these people leave, or did they not do that then?
I just don't really remember. Now, there was a hooper named Cooney Hooper that built airplanes beside McClellan's building. But I still ain't seen that note on
Now,
it.
why did that become an airport?
They just,
I mean, I'm sure it was just a...
it's like a personal airport. Of course, Willard Thompson and Forrest Humphrey, my uncle, took people for rides on Sunday. You paid so much, and they'd take you up for so long and fly you over the rock quarry and around some things, and then come back in, land, get some more people, and go do it again. Now, crashed down off of Glad Springs Road probably around 1964. So he didn't do no flying after that.
Would they have to have insurance for that like they do now, or did people not do
They're
all?
supposed to have, but they didn't do that. They home built them airplanes. They buy three, like buy 3 wrecked cars and make you one good. That's why they do them airplanes.
So back then, people were more...
Free to do stuff. You didn't have all these regulations. Now, they did fly one of them planes to Atlanta to get numbers put on it. And they told them, you fly it back and we don't want to ever see it in the air again.
So people back then would, like nowadays, I call to see how high they want the mailbox, out in front of the yard. Yeah, your age group, you didn't do none of that.
No.
It was just every man for himself sort of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, they sent me a thing after they come through Blacktop Osmond Road, and I had to jack my mailbox up because it wasn't the right height.
Oh, yeah.
That's the first time I ever had to do that. Over at Snakeman's, I got a drive shaft. Is my pole. And then mailboxes on it.
So back then, were people more self-sufficient?
Yeah. You didn't have all these here little backhoes and all these here people running around bobcats and backhoes and
Lawnmowers.
stuff. Yeah. Everybody mowed their own yard.
I mean, a lawnmower guy wouldn't have been able to stay in business then, right?
No, because most people could change a spark plug or
Change their oil.
air filter and oil and stuff.
And they did that.
Yeah.
And nowadays, we watch TV, right?
I had a customer way back yonder that was a machinist, and he made good money. But on evenings and on Friday, he made more money mowing yards from Oodawall to Ringo at them subdivisions. That's when there wasn't even that many subdivisions.
Right.
He made more money than he did as a machinist. And he'd come up and buy parts from me on Saturday morning, just enjoying himself.
But back then, people just, did they work all the time? On Saturdays?
About it.
Boy, we become a bunch of lazy sissies, hadn't we?
Yep. But you see, Les Stepp lived to be 102. Robert, like 4 months, being 101. They farmed and worked.
It's got to have something to do with it. They didn't watch what Robert still wouldn't watch what he ate, what he was hungry for, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Snakeman, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.